You're standing at the edge of the water. Not a lake, not a river, the ocean. Open, gray, and endless in every direction. You have no map, no compass, no boat, no rope, no metal of any kind. Your tools are made of stone and bone. The people standing next to you have never seen a boat because boats don't exist yet. And somehow, you have to convince them to get in the water with you. This isn't a thought experiment. This happened. At least 65,000 years ago, a group of humans crossed more than 70 miles of open ocean and reached Australia. Not by accident, not by walking, by crossing water on purpose, in the dark, with technology we would barely call primitive, in a world where one mistake meant everyone drowned, and nobody would ever know they tried.
The wheel hadn't been invented yet. Pottery hadn't been invented yet. Written language was still tens of thousands of years away. And someone looked at an ocean they had never crossed, with no knowledge of what was on the other side, and built something that could float, loaded people onto it, and left, and made it. That's what I want to show you, because this might be the most understated act of courage in all of human history, and almost nobody talks about it. When archaeologists first found signs of humans in Australia, dating back 65,000 years, it created a problem. Because even during the last ice age, when sea levels dropped dramatically and land masses that are underwater today were exposed, Australia was never connected to mainland Asia by land. There was always a stretch of open ocean in the way. The minimum crossing, even at the lowest sea levels we can calculate, was somewhere between 50 and 90 miles of open water, depending on the route. You couldn't walk it, you couldn't wade it, you had to cross it deliberately. And Australia isn't the only problem. Flores Island in Indonesia sits behind a deep oceanic trench that has never been a land bridge, not even during the most extreme sea level drops in the last million years. Getting there required a water crossing no matter when you tried. And stone tools found there date back 700,000 years, long before modern humans. Which means whoever made them crossed open water before our species even fully existed. We'll come back to that because it changes everything about what we think crossing an ocean required.
Then there's the Americas. The most widely accepted route is through Beringia, the land bridge between Siberia and Alaska that was exposed during the Ice Age. But growing evidence suggests some groups arrived by sea, hugging the Pacific coastline in boats, which means the water crossing problem wasn't just a one-time event. It was something humans kept doing in different places across thousands of years because the ocean kept being in the way of somewhere they wanted to go.
Now, let's be honest about what they were working with, because this is where the scale of it really hits you.
These people had no metal. Every tool they owned was made from stone, bone, or wood. They had no written knowledge to draw from, no tradition of maritime navigation passed down through books or charts. If someone had crossed water before them, that knowledge lived only in memory and story. They had no way to test a vessel before committing to it, no way to call for help if something went wrong, no way to know how far the crossing was or whether anything existed on the other side at all. What they likely built was something between a raft and an early dugout. Bamboo grows dense and fast across Southeast Asia, and it floats exceptionally well. A bamboo raft lashed together with plant fiber is stable enough to carry several people and their supplies. Reed boats, similar to craft that indigenous people in South America and Africa still build today, are another strong candidate. Simple, buildable with stone tools, capable of handling open water if the conditions are right. Some researchers believe early crossings used multiple smaller floats tied together, essentially a catamaran shape, which is more stable in open ocean swells than a single flat raft. None of this required advanced engineering. What it required was the ability to observe, to plan ahead, and to make a decision under uncertainty. And that is something humans had in abundance. But building something that floats is only half the problem. The other half is knowing where to go. Open ocean navigation without instruments sounds like guesswork. It wasn't. The people making these crossings were extraordinary observers of the natural world in ways most of us have completely lost. The stars move in predictable arcs across the sky, and certain stars sit almost fixed above specific points on the horizon. Pacific Islanders, whose ancestors were among the greatest open ocean navigators in history, memorized star paths the way we memorize roads. They knew which star rose above which island. They used that knowledge to hold a heading through the night.
During the day, ocean swells move in consistent patterns set by distant winds. A navigator who knew those patterns could feel the direction of travel through the movement of the raft beneath them, even with their eyes closed. Some Polynesian navigators trained themselves to read swell direction by lying flat on the deck and feeling the hull's motion against their body. Birds were a landmark you could follow. Certain species roost on land and feed at sea, which means in the evening they fly toward shore. Clouds tend to form and stack above islands because the land heats the air differently. A smear of fixed cloud on the horizon while everything else moves often means land underneath it. Floating vegetation, changes in water color, the types of fish near the surface, all of it was information that a careful observer could read like a map. These weren't guesses. They were a systematic reading of the world that took generations to build and was passed down as one of the most valuable things a group could own. Here's the part most people skip over entirely. This was not one person's decision. Crossing 70 miles of open ocean on a bamboo raft required a group. You needed people to build the vessel, to paddle and navigate, to bail water, to manage food and fresh water for a crossing that could take several days depending on conditions. And that means someone had to convince the others to go. Think about what that conversation looks like. You've never done this. Nobody you know has done this. You're proposing that a group of people climb onto a thing you built out of wood and float away from everything they know toward water that has no end they can see. Some of them have children. Some of them are afraid. And you're asking them to trust you. The person who led that crossing wasn't just brave. They were persuasive. They were trusted. They had built enough credibility within their group that people were willing to follow them into genuine uncertainty. Leadership, real leadership, is older than any institution we've ever built. It was already there on a beach 65,000 years ago, asking people to do something terrifying because there was something worth reaching on the other side. Now here's the part that should genuinely stop you cold. Flores Island, 700,000 years ago. Stone tools. An oceanic trench that has never closed, which means a water crossing was made not by Homo sapiens, not by modern humans, but almost certainly by Homo erectus, a human ancestor with a smaller brain, less complex language, and tools barely more advanced than a sharp rock. They crossed open water, and we don't fully know how. Some researchers argue it was accidental. Groups swept out to sea by tsunamis or storms and deposited on the island by chance. Others argue the consistency of the tools found there suggests repeated crossings, which implies intention. Whether it was deliberate or catastrophically accidental, the result is the same. A pre-modern human ended up on an island behind a water barrier that geography says should have been uncrossable, and they survived there long enough to leave evidence behind. If Homo erectus crossed water, then the capacity for this wasn't something that appeared suddenly with modern human cognition. It was something deeper, older, and stranger than we thought. The drive to cross, to see what's on the other side, might not be a modern idea at all. It might be something baked into us from so far back, we can't fully trace it. For 65,000 years, every person born in Australia is descended from people who made that crossing. Every indigenous culture, every language, every story told around every fire on that continent traces back to a group of people who stood at the edge of an ocean they couldn't see across and decided to go anyway. With bamboo, with their hands, with whatever knowledge they had managed to accumulate about stars and birds and the way water moves. They didn't know they were doing something impossible. They just knew there was somewhere else, and they had the means to try. And the fact that it worked, that people landed
and survived and built entire worlds on the far side of that crossing tells you something about what humans are actually made of when the only option is forward. We spend a lot of time feeling stuck, held back by things we can't control, by distances that seem too large, by problems that have no clear solution. And somewhere in the back of that feeling is the assumption that the crossing might not be worth it, that the other side might not be real. Your ancestors stood at the edge of an actual ocean with actual nothing and got in anyway. And the other side was real. It always was.